Hi, it's V. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm reading a memoir I wrote back in high school. This was a really rough year, my junior year in high school. I had a lot of stuff going on with my mental state and with my sexuality, and this documented how I was feeling at the time, what was going on. If you don't find this interesting, I will see you another week. Like I said in my previous video, I'm really busy trying to move and with some other emotional stuff, so this is what I have for you this week. Here we go. It's called Alcohol and Coffee Beans: The Story of a Friendship by Calvin Kenting, which was an anagram of my name, and all the names in here are anagrams, but I'm not going to read the anagrammed last names, so you won't know who they are. I will also post the audio in the description if you just want to listen and don't want to watch it on YouTube, because the video is going to be very boring, and I will also post the scanned text when I get around to it. The stories to follow are closely based on true events. The names of the characters have been altered to protect their identities and reputations. To Gordon. Gordon. He's about 5'7" and has short, dark brown hair in that crew cut that all the athletes have. His eyes are even darker. He loves sports. He would play any sport, any time, and he was always in good shape. Gordon worked at a bagel shop in town. Gordon loved his job and got to work with some of the hottest senior girls. 2 of them asked him to prom that year. He did well in school, but not nerdy well, level 1 well. Gordon was the model junior guy, but at the same time he was different, above the stereotypes. He never got drunk or smoked, but what set him most apart was his solitude and stability despite his popularity. Chapter 1. The Retreat. We were in New Hampshire, at a retreat, away from the world. I was there with my church, my high school group. I liked everyone there and I fit, but he did not seem to want to fit. Often he wasn't with the rest of us. I could have hung with anyone else there, but he was a challenge, difficult to find. As humans, we want most what we can't have. I wanted to be friends with him more than anyone else. Our second night there, we all sat around a bonfire, marshmallows roasting, a guitar playing. We were all singing. It should have been a good time. I should have been able to sit there and enjoy the moment, the people, that place in time and space that was so unique and warm. But instead, I looked around at what I couldn't have. He was missing. I silently left the circle, the halo of light cast by the fire. I ventured into the darkness. I thought that maybe if he knew that I cared, that I wanted to help, he might open. I looked all around in the ink-black air. I walked down the hill to the soccer field and over to the volleyball court. I looked by the flagpole, then by our cabin. He wasn't anywhere, but I kept searching, outside the boundaries, into the woods. I saw something, a glimmer of light, his cell phone. Gordon sat at a bench in a clearing. He was reading, thinking, praying. I walked over and sat down. He looked up and smiled. You found me. I asked him if anything was wrong. I asked him why he came out, evaded the crowd, went emo. He said he needed to get away, by himself, to read, to think. Sorry to interrupt, but if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here. Sure. That was all he said. Well, I guess I'll leave you alone. He remained silent. Nothing. I walked back toward the main group, but did not rejoin the circle. I wanted to be alone. I wanted to get what he was getting from his solitude. There was a large pile of branches and dirt near the main group. It shadowed me from the light of the fire. I could hear the singing, the laughter, the community. I was close, yet completely separated. I sat there and prayed like I hadn't before. I wrapped my arms around my legs and rocked back and forth. Show me a sign, show me what to do, a sign so I'll know whether or not to give up. Let us be friends, please. Show me a sign, show me, please. I rocked and rocked, repeated the words, repeating. I chanted them over and over, waiting. I heard answers coming at me, but I could not tell who was speaking. I kept asking, praying, rocking, trying to drown out the voice of my own subconscious, trying to hear God. Finally, doubts began to fade, and I heard, "Don't give up. Keep trying. Gordon needs a core friend just as much as you do." I was still unsure it was him, God, but I wanted it to be, so I believed it was. I had my answer. I lifted myself off the ground and walked out from the branches, the darkness, returning to the light. Chapter 2. The Park. There's something about the park late at night, some comforting element, some calming component to the midnight air whispering through the branches of pine and birch. At that hour, there is some kind of magic that soothes the soul. I went there often, especially during that time, almost every night. I just needed to sort everything, sort through the scum of life. I was struggling, trying to find meaning amidst the crazy escapade we know as high school. There, in the dark, I could view my life in third person. I could escape all fear, harm, and intimidation. I swung the swings, ran the diamond, shot the court, and it was all outside my complex of life. Nothing I did there affected tomorrow, and in that there was freedom, no boundaries. I thought and worried and pondered, examining my life, each sector, each compartment, trying to fix what could only be broken. I kept walking in circles around the park, gazing up at the trillions of twinkling lights that watched over my trouble, then down at the dark, damp grass that bent under my stride. I walked the park a dozen times, singing, thinking, praying, talking to myself, trying to rationalize away my problems, trying to find a solution that might be hiding somewhere in the brisk night air, seeking the answers that everyone else seemed to grasp intuitively. But nothing came. So I called Gordon. The phone rang as I walked. He picked up. "Hey, what's up?" He said it in this cool, friendly way that made me feel better. I said that I needed someone to talk to. He said, "Of course, shoot away." And I talked, laid everything out, friends, family, loves, losses. I told him where I was, the park, alone, going emo like he did. He laughed. "I told you, isn't it great to get away?" I agreed. But what I really needed was for someone to care, someone to confide in, and someone to trust me. The park would always be there, but I wanted a person. I tried to reach out, begging for him to take the bait, to ask me questions, and to spill his life back on me. But he was not that kind of guy. He was reserved, solitary, complete by himself. He seemed so comfortable with who he was, so secure, so individual. I wanted to be him. Why wouldn't he tell me the secret, the key to his perfect ego, his complete sense of security? He never asked for help. I wanted that, not to care what anyone else thought, and just to be who I am. I longed to fit in at school with him and his group, the crew of junior guys that were always where they wanted to be, where I wanted to be. Gordon's crew had it all, and I wanted so bad to fit in with that crowd. I told him that I felt awkward, that I didn't fit, that I wasn't quite like him and his friends, that I wished I was. But he disagreed. "You are one of us. You fit in fine. What makes you different?" I didn't point out anything. "Nothing," I answered. "See, there you go. You're one of us." His words were empty. He was wrong. None of them were awkward, cowardly, dorky, socially inept. I would never quite match their standard. I knew one day he would take back those words. All he said, it was just fluff. He did not back it up. He did not treat me like I fit, like a friend. I still wanted him to trust me, to tell me why he went off to the woods, about his ex, Judy, how she had crushed him, how he felt. I wanted him to trust me, wanted so bad. Instead, again, nothing. So I said my thank you and my good night. Call any time, he said before he hung up. Everyone liked him, respected him, but he was so closed, so walled. People say that no man is an island. He was, he is, and I wanted to be too. I aspired to be that one-man show, doing well at what I wanted and only failing at what I let fail. So I stood in the dark. I still had no answers to my questions, no lasting reassurance. I continued to walk in circles around the park. Small noises came from the forest, and I was filled with a childish fear. I thought back to when my mom warned me of the perverts and rapists that stalked the parks. But then the fear faded. I looked out into the trees, into the darkness. I called out to them, asking them to kill me, to end it all. Chapter 3, Donuts. We whipped around the corners in his yellow Ford Focus. I had just gotten off from work at Dunkin' Donuts. It was 9:30 p.m. and we were flying down the back streets of Lexington, windows down, bass pumping. A huge bag of donuts I had saved from the trash sat on the back seat next to me along with a couple cartons of eggs. It was crazy and I loved it. We were aiming for road signs. Gordon out the driver's window, Sam out the passenger's, and me out the moonroof. We were driving fast, driving nowhere, laughing and joking, aiming and firing. We would turn down the music and listen for the clang of the donut or the splat of the egg. The sign would rock, and we would shout, holler, and cheer. It was exhilarating, invigorating. It was risky, it was illegal, and my adrenaline was rushing. My pulse was beating faster and faster. We would see headlights up again, and we'd all duck into the car, hoping that no one had seen, and we would ride onward. I sat in the back beaming, so glad to be part of it. I threw another donut. Shit, I shouted. I missed again. My aim is so bad. That one was so close. Hey, you're not on the baseball team. We have the advantage. Don't worry about it. You'll get the next one. They turned the music up and we rode on and on. Splat, 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 bang, bang, whoosh. The sounds of the night were etched into my memory forever. There was satisfaction in creating that, to throw and bang. I thought, this is the sign. We'll be friends, core friends after all. Maybe you don't need to talk. Maybe it doesn't matter if you trust, you care. Maybe friendship is about the time spent together, how much and how wild. That's what Sam thought anyway. He once said to me, friends are not people that tell each other their secrets or feelings or their life problems. Friends are people you hang out with that will be there when you really need them. That's what Gordon was, and so he was my friend. I forgot my worries about trust and honesty as I flew along those back roads. I stood, torso out the top of the car, arm held back, hoping the night would never end, hoping that there would be many more. Chapter 4, Trampoline. I had wanted them to stay over, but a couple hours was all that either of them had. Sam and Gordon were always busy with baseball, so we hung out on my trampoline. I had been practicing for weeks. Ever since I had bought the trampoline, I had been trying to flip. I had succeeded once or twice, but now they were there. Gordon could flip frontward and backward without a hint of an effort. But when I tried, I failed. I was too tall and awkwardly uncoordinated to curl up in a ball and spin those 360 degrees. It killed me that I couldn't, especially because it came to him so easily. I had tried for so long and all I could do was flop on my ass. Every time I attempted to match him, it ended with him appearing harder, better, faster, and stronger than before. But I handled defeat pretty well. I was so used to it. He won again and again, and I would never beat him. It was just the reality, but by no means could I give up. He listened to country. I did too. He didn't drink. I didn't. He played ping pong. I played ping pong. Why? because he was a person that demanded respect and I wanted that. A large tree looms over the trampoline. Sometimes I lie and look straight up into its complex pine needle canopy, gaze up at the network of crisscrossing branches. I love that tree. It was always my tree. There were 3 in our side yard, one for me and one for each of my brothers. Mine was perfect. It had 2 limbs that jutted out at the same point on the trunk, about 15 feet above the ground. I used to sit there and hide during games or read when I was bored. And that spot was also directly above the trampoline. Sam jumped first. He put on his shoes as to not hurt his feet as he landed. It took him a few seconds to build up the courage. He swung out and let go. Silence. A few seconds passed in slow motion as he fell. He bounced a little, but sort of collapsed. He laughed. Next, Gordon went. He asked me to film it on his phone. He didn't hesitate at all. Once he had climbed the limb, he immediately jumped and bounced slightly to the edge of the trampoline. I went last. It took me longer. I must have been standing up there for 3 minutes. But I finally let go. I dropped down. They laughed and agreed that I had the most pathetic landing. Gordon taped it and sent it out to all of our friends as a joke. I smiled. I had even sucked at falling. When I was growing up, whenever I imitated someone, my mom would always ask, "If he jumped off a bridge, would you jump too?" I would have. Chapter 5. Alcohol and Coffee Beans. During lunch, my girlfriend pulled me aside. She told me that she wanted to go for a walk. We did, and she stopped in front of the library. I knew that something was wrong. "You're a very nice guy, but I'm not physically attracted to you." I stood there a few seconds. It hit me like a tidal wave. We had been going together for a couple months, and everything had been going well. A million thoughts raced through my mind. Why? How? I don't need you. What am I going to do without you? "Okay, see you around," I said. I didn't want to make a fool of myself and ask her to give me another chance. That is not how I wanted to be remembered. I walked away, back toward the lunchroom. I picked up my backpack and walked out the door. I waited for lunch to be over, waited to be put in a class to be forced to think about something else. I walked round and round the school, trying to keep her out of my head, trying to focus on anything else. Those last few minutes of lunch lasted for days. But once the bell rang, the rest of the school day passed in a panicked, nauseous blur. The last bell rang and I walked to work, head down. My phone vibrated, but I didn't want to see who was calling or texting me. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I walked under my own heartsick, isolated rain cloud of forsaken pain. I arrived at work, clocked in, and began to clean. Began to busy myself with the routine jobs and duties. I clung to the hustle and bustle of the after-school crowd, rushing in to get coffee and donuts. I focused on the orders and the customers, the people I had little connection to. But slowly the rush dwindled down, and then the store lay quiet. And there I stood, back up against the wall, working over what I was about to do. I already knew. Ever since I walked out the cafeteria door, I knew. I had never done it before, but I was going to get drunk. Drink my troubles away, drown in an ocean of alcohol, wash away to some other place far away. I was going to drink so much that I would find out if those drunk goggles from health class were really legit. So I went to the back room. I told the shift leader that I needed some booze. A lot of booze. I got an espresso cup and got going. After a few shots of aftershock had slid down my throat, I was feeling a little tipsy, but I wanted more. I had been tipsy before. I didn't want to just feel nice. I wanted to be completely uprooted from my perception of reality. I needed more. I passed the shift leader a 20. I told her that I would do all the work if she got me more, got me drunk. She returned 15 minutes later from Nikki's with 5 nips of vodka along with the 10 change. I set them aside for closing, when it wouldn't matter and I wouldn't get fired. When it was 9 o'clock, I headed to the back, and in the space of 5 minutes, I downed the 5 of them. Then she drove me to youth group. I always went to church on Friday nights, so that is where I went next. I had lost my sense of judgment, but the shots had not yet kicked in when I arrived. I climbed the stairs to the main room. I brought up the leftover donuts from work and set them on a table. Everyone rushed over. Jude was the only one that noticed, smelled the liquor on my breath. He pulled me aside into a back hallway. "Calvin, are you crunk?" he asked me in his white suburban slang. I nodded with a grin. I had this, and this, and this, as I pulled the small plastic bottles out of my pockets. I drank some water from the fountain. "Have you eaten anything?" he asked. "No," I told him. He made me eat one of the donuts. He said it would help, but I didn't want it to. Just then, Sam came by. He motioned me out of the building. He didn't know anything yet. "Hey, come on, Gordon, Sam, and I are sledding out back." I followed him. "I am so drunk," I said. "Drunk?" "Just tipsy." "Why?" Nothing, I said. By then, all the alcohol was kicking in. I stumbled through the parking lot to the back of the church. We got to the other 2 and I spilled. I don't want to live anymore. I hate myself. Everyone hates me. You all would hate me if you knew who I was. Sam would hate me. Other Sam would hate me. Gordon would hate me. Maybe not. Maybe Gordon wouldn't hate me. Maybe other Sam wouldn't hate me, but Sam would definitely hate me. No, you all would hate me. I don't want to live anymore. I stumbled around in circles, falling in the snow, drenching my clothes, soaking myself, wet to the skin, clothes plastered to my shaking body. I hate myself. I hate myself. "You don't hate yourself," they said. "Yes, I do." "No, I don't." "No, yes, I do. I hate myself. I want to die." Other Sam was a youth group leader and came over to me. "What did you drink?" he asked. "This, and this, and this," I said as I pulled them out once more, "and something cinnamon-y, something cinnamon-y, something cinnamon-y." "Are you going to do this again?" he asked. "Yes, no, yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no, no." I sounded like Gilbert Grape, and I kept rambling, and I smiled at that thought. He asked more questions. I answered, yes, no, yes, no, no, yes. "What's your home phone number? I'm going to call your mom," he said. 112-347-8921, I rattled off. "But please don't call it." I was still shivering on the ground. Gordon took off his sweatshirt and slid it over my vibrating frame, and he took me to his car and guided me into the driver's seat. I sat there and I was suddenly overwhelmed with an unbearable exhaustion. My head sank down to the steering wheel and I hit the horn. I sat straight up. Sorry, I said, and my head lowered back to the wheel. Gordon pushed the horn down this time, but I didn't realize. I bolted upright. Sorry. Then the youth pastor came out to take me home. Gordon helped me to Todd's car, and I passed out in the passenger seat, and I've never remembered the rest. Chapter 6. Texting. It was Sunday after church, and I was in Dunkin' Donuts. I was pissed at Gordon because we never hung out. I took out my phone and began to text. First I wrote, "You've never invited me to hang out with you. Are we even friends?" I deleted that. I wrote, "Are we still friends? Were we ever?" I deleted that too. I typed, "What does it mean to be a friend?" I sent it. It wasn't the first time I'd sent him a deep question. The text was relatively subtle and focused. I stood behind the counter, serving the occasional customer. It was pretty dead in the store. Few people go for coffee on Sunday nights. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I reached for it and snapped it open. A friend is someone who knows who you are and can still stand to be around you, he replied. What a textbook answer. So you have to trust each other? I asked, trying to manipulate the conversation slowly to an accusation. Yes. Are we friends? Yeah, of course. Why? I don't know. You don't really trust me. I've trusted you with a lot. I told you a lot at church that night. That doesn't count. You were drunk, but I trust you. I don't mean trust like lending me your CDs. I mean you never talk about yourself, who you are. What do you have to hide? I'm not hiding. You can ask me anything. I'll answer you. Even about Judy, his ex. Yep. It would take me a long time to text all my questions. Only one, came the response. I thought for a long time about what to ask him. I decided on something I had always wondered, a question rooted in my mind, the reason for my insecurity around him. How can you be so self-confident and popular? You could be friends with anyone in school. Why are you friends with me when I'm not that cool? I waited for the reply, anxious. I decide who's cool, and I don't think that is true about school anyway. I do think so, but thanks. I read his text over and over, and I felt a little better, but I still had questions. Why, if we were such good friends, did we not hang out together? I needed to know he wasn't just trying to be nice as not to offend me. Can I ask you one more if it's not really about you? I typed. Sure, shoot. If I ever do something that annoys you, will you promise to yell at me for it? Yes, lol, he replied. He had promised. Thank you. Night, man. Night, dude. He had promised. I didn't have to worry that he was lying anymore. Chapter 7. Driving. It was a Tuesday night. Small group Bible study at Carla's. Gina led the group, a seminary student that interned at our church. Gordon, Sam, Diane, and a few others from my youth group went. That week, Gordon and Sam had a baseball game, and they couldn't make the meeting. Near the end of group, I got a text. Could you hook us up with some donuts? Gordon. Yes, I answered. I called the night shift leader and asked her to leave the donuts outside the back door for Gordon and Sam, and she did. I told Gordon where to pick them up. Thanks, he replied. Can you give me a ride home? I'll be there after I get the donuts. The meeting ended. Carla and I waited, talking, watching corny SNL videos. I got another text. Can you come out and get right in when we get there? I don't want to talk to Carla. Sure. I headed out and Carla followed me. Gordon's Ford pulled up the street a few minutes later. Sam was in the passenger seat. Gordon had opened the roof. Jump in. He never came to a complete stop. He slowed. I jumped onto the roof. Hey, Gordon. Carla, a friendly greeting. In response, he threw a donut out the window. The second I got a leg into the car, he shot off. Have a good night, she shouted after us as we drove off into the night. The three of us laughed. I grabbed a chocolate frosted, took a bite out of it, stood up, and threw it out at a speed limit sign. We dropped Sam off, and I hopped into the front seat. Gordon's folder of CDs sat on the floor, and I popped in a Rodney Atkins album and turned it to the last track. Gordon sat there on the seat beside me. His mysterious face gazed through the windshield, out onto the road and beyond. His eyes stared past into the depths, and he smiled. That face contorted and showed an emotion. It was a strange and rare phenomenon. We talked about Carla. He had ditched her in the dark without a word. Why? They used to be friends. I needed to know. Was that going to be me one day, standing in the dark, watching his taillights dim and holding a donut he chucked at my face? What did she do? Carla's been getting really annoying lately. She's trying to be like Gina, but she's not. She thinks she's the shit, but she's really not. I understood what he was saying, and I even agreed. I was so happy that he was explaining something. I cannot recall any other occasion where he explained himself, the complex drives that forced his actions. It was like peeking into some complicated mechanism that no one on earth had yet been able to comprehend and getting a small hint at its grandeur and beautiful power. I smiled and trashed Carla with him. Hell, I would throw anyone under the train to get a little closer, to take a glimpse at the cogs and switches that ran his life, the pulleys, levers, and other trinkets that manifested his solar plexus and gave birth to his being, his true consciousness. We rode home, and I had what I wanted completely, at least for those few moments of marginal trust, and it produced a sense of completeness that I soaked in for days. I radiated with some sick glee. Gordon was ripping a friend apart, but I loved it anyway. It meant that I was better than her. I had gotten closer than her. I understood more about life, about high school, everything. I had his respect, a small infinitesimal piece of his respect that was all I needed, what I craved. I left Gordon's car with that hidden joy. He had given me something. Chapter 8. Christmas Lights. Have you ever had those moments that last a lifetime? I sat in the back and the car was on wings, the wings of the music, the wings of the night, and I loved it. Gordon sat in the passenger seat, Carla was driving, and Diane sat on my right. We were living, singing at the top of our lungs, Taylor Swift, Our Song, Teardrops on My Guitar, the most feminine songs you've ever heard, but no one was judging. It was all acceptance, and I knew that these were the best friends I had ever had. I could have died in that moment and still have lived. I stared out the window, resting my head on the glass. Then I looked around at everyone in the car. I loved them all, and I was alive, happy, complacent. I belonged, and I wanted to dwell in that sacred snapshot of life forever. We arrived. The Christmas lights were all around. We saw them. They were good. That is what we went to do, but that is not what made the night. Santa's workshop didn't make the night. I got some fried dough with powdered sugar and cinnamon. Gordon got munchkins. He loved munchkins. The fried dough was okay. We stood and we ate. We looked around, talked, laughed, and I was there. I had been invited. I was included. They liked me. They liked me too. I could not wait for the ride home, to sing again, to live again, to be who I am with people who are alive. I loved that Gordon didn't judge me. He sang just as loud, maybe even louder, and he did not care. We were having fun. He loved it too. We all loved it. The moments that last a lifetime, that never fade, that last forever. They come to me every once in a while, but that one was one of the only ones junior year. There were other things I will never forget, but none of the others gave me the feeling to live for, the feeling to die for. There is something about cars at night with the music blasting, when the ride feels like it could go on forever, and still I would never want it to end. So we rode and rode, headlights flashing past, stars glistening above, and us in our cocoon, our bubble, our sanctuary of light, of sound, of a trust, a friendship that never dies. We smiled, we laughed, and the girls laughed even harder at us guys as we sang along with the high-pitched melodies, and we were all high, higher than life, above worries and school and the Christmas presents we had yet to buy. The bass shook the car with Carrie Underwood and Brad Paisley. We all knew the words. We all sang along. It was terrible music by the world's standards, but the lyrics drove home and they joined us, united, forever. The four of us, sailing, flying, falling, swimming, diving, rushing, racing. The air melted. The space between us dissolved into the night. I slammed the beat into the chair in front of me. I sang myself hoarse. I belted it so loud, but the music was even louder. No one could hear, and it would never matter. It would mean nothing that I was off key. Nothing. We were excited and free. We just were. And at that point, for once, for one of those rare moments, I knew I was where I most wanted to be, needed to be, was meant to be. I breathed easy. We all laughed. I was so happy I nearly cried. We kept singing, smiling, trusting forever, forever, forever. No one thought. We just did. Instinct, flesh and blood. Nothing more or less. The world turned without us. Then suddenly, like a blade slicing down a guillotine, that night, the night that meant eternities, ended. Diane was dropped off, and it was Carla, Gordon, and I. We pulled up to my house. I said my goodbye and my thank you, but I could not, express my gratitude. That night made my year, and my life kept rolling, rolling, rolling. But it soothed me to know that it could pause, it could stop, as it had that night. Chapter 9. Spoons. It started in the library. Free block on Friday. It was still winter. Snow and slush lined the parking lot outside the window. I couldn't find anyone. They all had the same free block, Gordon, Sam, and Ron. They were always at one of the round tables on the right side of the library. I texted, asking where they were. We always hung out during the free blocks, G blocks. They didn't answer for 10-15 minutes. Then it came. "We're at Gordon's. Bring some spoons." I stepped out of the library and called. Sam explained that they were all out of clean spoons and they needed some from the cafeteria. I asked Gordon to make sure. Gordon would never lie to me. I had trusted him with my worries and desires. I could trust him with anything. He told me to hurry. His house is 20 minutes from the school, walking, 15 jogging. Once I arrived, we could hang out for 10 and then he could drive us back. I walked quickly down the main hallway, through Commons 1 into Commons 2. I grabbed a few of the white plastic spoons and jogged out down Muzzy Street. I was wearing a pair of Timberlands, and they weighed down heavily as I slapped through the gray slush. My backpack dragged down on my shoulders, and I was forced to lean forward to maintain my center of balance. I made a right down Vivian Lane and took another down Sherburne Road. My face red from the cold, my breath rushing out in a cold frost as I panted. There was his bright yellow Ford sitting in his driveway. I slowed for the last 100 yards to catch my breath. I didn't want them to know I had jogged the whole way. I walked up the steps and rang the side bell. His 2 dogs yelped and barked as they ran to the door. I stood waiting for someone to answer. A minute passed and my heart dropped to my toes. The dogs were the only ones to greet me. I tried to call Gordon. He didn't answer. I had a message in my phone. It was Sam. One of Gordon's dogs had peed on the floor. They needed napkins as well. Then he burst into laughter. I hadn't felt my cell phone vibrate. I had been running too hard. Something swelled within me, one of those knots. It sank down my throat into my gut. It ached. Anger at my own stupidity and the cruelty. It was all a game to them, but I wanted them to feel guilt, especially Gordon, but he never would. I threw the spoons onto the yard. I stood silent, paced in circles, then began to run back the way I came. Fuck. I knew it was supposed to be funny, but I hated it, and I was going to be late for class. I walked through the bathroom door 10 minutes late. Sweat turned my shirt dark. I breathed uncomfortably. Everyone turned quiet for a few moments as I walked to my seat in the far corner next to Ron. I glared at him. He looked at me. His eyes shone and he chuckled. My body hurt for the rest of the day. There was a pit in my core and I couldn't do anything. I confronted Sam first. He said it was just for fun. We were sitting in Commons 1 the whole time. You passed right by us. We ducked our heads down as you walked by. You need to learn to look around. So gullible. I texted Gordon later at work. I told him I trusted him more than any of them, and I couldn't believe that he would ever lie to me. A few minutes passed, and I received it. The same text I had just sent, back from Sam. How could Gordon do that? I trust you. If I tell you something, I don't want Sam to know. Why, man? I sent. Whatever, man. You need to learn to take a joke. Chapter 10. The Baseball Diamond. I walked in circles. I used to do that a lot, whenever I was nervous, uncertain. I debated whether or not I should go to the baseball game. Sam and Gordon's first game. They were my friends and I wanted to support them. There were only 3 or 4 students on the bleachers. I was unsure whether or not to go watch or go home. It was terribly cold, windy. I did not have a winter jacket, just a thin sweatshirt. I had never liked watching sports anyway. Why not go home? But I decided to watch the game. I climbed the bleachers and sat. Sam and Gordon were subpar compared to the rest of the varsity team, and they barely played. Sam was a pitcher, but he never pitched. Gordon was a second baseman, but he never played second. They were benched for most of the game, but I still stayed as my feet went numb. It got so cold that the coach made Sam run along the third base line to stay warm. The other spectators left for the comfort of their cars. I could not feel my feet and my face turned red and raw, but I stayed. Stayed because I'd appreciate the same from them if I were in their shoes. The air bit my body and tore at my strength of will. Both teams sat hunched on their benches, arms inside their shirts, wrapped around their chests. I sat for the full game. Gordon never hit a ball, and Sam got 1 single the whole game. Our team won. The other team was terrible. It wasn't even a season game, so no one cared all that much. But I had stayed despite that, enduring 3 hours or so of torture. I walked alongside them as they walked to the locker room, wiggling my toes, trying to bring them back to life. You stayed? They asked. No, thank you. No congratulations for not catching frostbite. Just that question. But maybe they were too cold for gratitude. Yep, I answered. Nice game. Chapter 11. Promises. For a while, we didn't hang out so much. I kept asking him, but he would always have a reason to dodge the invites. Gordon never straight up told me he didn't want to chill with me anymore. Instead, he just avoided. We saw each other through church and school, but nothing other than that. And for Lent, I gave up asking him. But after Easter, I made plans for April break. He canceled the first ones, so we made seconds. He canceled, then third plans, and then he canceled again. It came to Friday at youth group. I arrived around 9:30 after work and headed for the gym to find Gordon and Sam. They were in the middle of a basketball game. I had never been good at basketball, so I went to look for Carla and Gina. I talked to them, waited for the game to end. But after, I couldn't find Gordon or Sam. He had just ditched me for the 4th time that week. If he never wanted to hang out anymore, he should have told me like a man. He could have confronted me. For 2 months, nothing. Then I come to youth group exhausted after a 9-hour shift, and he pulls this shit. I had to say something, do something, so I texted him. You lie to me 3 times, then you ditch me at youth group? It was a little harsh, but I wanted him to feel guilty and apologize or to just confront me. It took a few minutes for his reply. Ha 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 ha. I stared at the cell screen. He had never been so insulting. Why the fuck would you laugh? I waited again, hanging on to some small hope that he might decide to fix things. Then another text. Unlike you, I have other friends. I hang out with you sometimes. Feel lucky. The conversation went on. He called me a pussy. Gordon told me he found my tampon in his car as a cruel joke. I hurled a few defensive insults, and then it was over. Our friendship was over. I had just helped him with a chem lab the week before. He had just driven me to small group the week before. We had just talked like friends the week before, but it was all over. Later I found out it wasn't even Gordon texting me. It was Sam, but that bothered me even more. Gordon hadn't even had the respect to confront me himself. He had his little bitch do it for him. But despite all that, I didn't give up. I would have forgiven him if he had asked for my forgiveness. I would have let go if he had explained his actions. So I waited for him to say something, do something, but we didn't talk after that. We didn't talk for weeks. Chapter 12. The Cafe. I walked around and around in circles trying to build up the courage, but I couldn't. But I had promised myself, so I had to. I needed to do it, but I was scared, nervous, cowardly. I was all the things I hated about him. I was right about those things too, the little fuck. I kept walking. I'd look in the cafe from one entrance, then walk around to the other and look in again. I was waiting for the moment to be easier, for some circumstance that would make things less awkward, less painful. But he stayed behind the counter, steaming milk and brewing the shit coffee. I hated him. But I forced myself to go, to walk up, to speak. He tried not to give me any attention, to ignore me completely, but I would not leave. This was it. No more cowardice. Fuck cowards. So I finally walked up and he lifted his eyes. What's up? He said it cool. He said it lightly. He said it so smooth and normal, and I hated him even more. He acted like the previous month meant nothing. He acted like we were still friends, but we were never friends. I asked him if I could talk to him. He said, what? About what? In that same cool way that I despise, I loathe. I wanted to rip his head off. I wanted to see him bleed. I wanted to see someone kill him, and for me to watch him flail as he lay on the floor dying, twitching to a terrible end. I wanted someone to take everything from him. His loves, his passions, his friends, his family, and whatever it was that powered his disgusting, egocentric existence. But the question remained lingering in the air. What? What? He knew the answer, and he asked what. I told him I needed to talk to him alone. Sure, can you wait a bit, man? In that same fucking tone that suggested that everything was all right. I wanted to scream at him, it's not all right. Nothing's fucking all right, you fake little motherfucking bitch. But I couldn't. I was in a church, for God's sake. So I went and stood by the wall, brooding, but not brooding, because I still would not allow myself to completely hate him. Instead, I worried. Am I pathetic or what? I worried about what I would say, what he would say. I did not understand that he would never be my friend, and his friendship should be the last thing I wanted anyway. But I waited and fucking waited. He should have been waiting for me. He was the one that did the wrong. Why should I be the one shaking my shoes? Why should he be in the position of power? I don't know. I couldn't know, and no one will ever know why these things happen. Fucking hell. And I waited some more. I talked to Chloe, the Athena, the mother figure. Although we conversed, I would not accept her wisdom. I would not let her speak to me. She asked me how I was doing. I said, good. That's what you say to your mother when everything is falling to pieces, right? She said I looked bad, like something was bothering me. I said that everything was all right. I'm just tired, I said. And we talked some more.
That little shit continued to stall. He went around the island in the center of the cafe, filling the sugar, filling the napkins, filling the cream, filling the sugar, and it hurt. But I hung on to the slight uncertainty. I made myself believe that that is what he had to do. Sugar, napkins, cream, sugar. I wanted the doubt, wanted to hang on to that chance that he was telling the truth. But no, he just wouldn't talk. Because after he finished, he joined a circle of people talking, chatting about nothing at all. Void shit, yes. So I went up to him again and asked if we could talk. Really? He said. It was not a question. He said it like I was pathetic. He spoke with an undercutting, disgusting surprise. And he had lost his cool facade. What a schmuck. What a fucking ego case. I nodded in response, because I could not bring myself to speak. We walked out into the hallway, and I asked him why. Why haven't you spoken to me in a month? Why are you ignoring me? And why did you lie to me and ditch me, forsake me and shun me, oust me and cut me, kill me and crush me? It's all cool. We were just playing with you. That's what he said. But why? I said. Why? It can't be nothing. There has to be a reason. What did I do? It was nothing, he said, and walked away from me. I wanted to chase after him, to tackle him to the ground, to bite his ears off and dig my fingers into his brain and tear out the poisonous, demonic soul that would haunt our universe for the rest of his sorry existence. But I let him go. I let him walk away from me forever. Or at least until next time. Chapter 13. The Woods. Sam invited me. There was going to be a get-together out by the Avalon. He asked me to bring some stuff. I agreed, but I needed to know one thing. Is Gordon going to be there? I asked. No, Sam answered. He better not be. Sam laughed. I knew that if I drank anything around Gordon, I wouldn't be able to control myself. Sam assured me that he would not be there. Our campsite was near a group of buildings. Boards covered the windows. The abandoned mental hospital. Cops circled every hour, making sure that no one disturbed this restricted section of Lexington property. The place was set apart, forbidden. So naturally, it was a hotspot for secret parties and illegal teenage activity. I had been in before. I had come with Sam and Jackson. The children's ward and the admissions building were relatively easy to get into. You just had to pry one of the boards off and you were all set. We went down to the file rooms and looked through the papers, and then even farther down to the boiler room. The whole floor was flooded with multiple feet of water, all laced with a reeking maroon layer of mold. We went to the roof. We climbed out the top of the buildings and looked out over the grounds. There were underground passages connecting all of the buildings. It was impossible to get in. But people say that once a crazy escaped from the men's ward into a tunnel. They say that he got hold of an axe and attacked one of the women there. They say he chopped her into 11 separate pieces and buried her in different places around the grounds. There were several graveyards. There were no names on the headstones, just patient numbers. It was a cool spot. A couple of times we saw cops circle, but they never saw us. We never got caught. But that night we weren't there for the buildings, or to explore the bounds of the cruel and unusual place that sat so near our campsite. That night we were there to drink. It was Sunday night of the Memorial Day weekend. I brought the beer, a 20-pack of Heinekens and some Red Bull. Sam brought a cheap bottle of whiskey. There were 6 of us, including myself. Jackson, John, Ron, Sam, and Gordon. When I arrived at 11:30, he was sitting there by the fire. I thought you said he wasn't going to be here, I whispered to Sam. I thought so too, Sam said with an ironic smile. Gordon didn't look at me. His disgusting face stared into the flames. I wanted to do something to yell at him. I wanted him to feel some sense of guilt. I wanted an apology. After the first 2 beers, it started to come out. I was barely tipsy, but I only needed a couple of drinks to feel comfortable flipping him the bird. But that was not enough. I wanted revenge. Payback for the month he hadn't spoken to me, for the pain that he'd caused, and for his solid refusal to give me an explanation. I wanted to get drunk again. Drunk like I had at church, but I did not want to be the only one there. So I started challenging people. Go shot for shot with me. Anyone, come on. I knew that I would get more tanked than anyone else. I weighed the least, and I had barely eaten anything all day. But it wasn't about winning. Sam agreed, and the real drinking began. We took shot after shot of the whiskey. It burned and made me gag, but I needed it. Needed the release, the exemption from the rules of socialization. Soon I was running my mouth off bad. Fuck you, Gordon, I said. Why did you ignore me? Fuck you. Fuck Gordon. Fuck Gordon. Fuck Gordon. You are such a bitch. And I continued to drink more and more. We drank until we finished the bottle, and then we switched over to beer. I hate you. Fuck Gordon. Fuck Gordon. I stumbled over and took a swing at him. I missed and crashed to the ground, my face slamming against the forest floor. I stood and tried again. He dodged me, and I fell once more, but I would not stop. After 4 or 5 attempts, he began to threaten me. Sam stepped between us. He was rather drunk. Calm down, guys, Sam said. I was too wasted to compute the difference between the two of them. I said, fuck Gordon again, and I punched Sam in the face. He pushed me to the ground. Sam pulled my arms behind my back. I struggled to get up, but I could not. I gave up. He let go, and I began to puke. I hurled. My body convulsed in a violent heave. My head thrust forward and my mouth spread wide. The whiskey, Red Bull, and acid gushed out in a greenish-yellowy fountain, pouring out my mouth and onto the ground. My insides were pulled, yanked from out of me. I puked over and over, my head aimed at the ground, the liquid gushing, then dripping, and gushing again. I felt disgusting, vile, inhuman, and they all stared at me. What had I done? I had been happy before I met him. What had I become? I passed out, dead on the ground.